Your credit card balance hits zero, and instead of relief, something else shows up: the urge to spend again. That isn't a coincidence, it's the system resetting. Right now, millions of people are escaping debt, only to rebuild it quietly, automatically, the exact same way. Small charges, easy taps, no friction. Nothing feels wrong in the moment. Until you realize your money isn't leaking because you're careless. It's leaking because modern life is engineered to make spending invisible. And in 2026, that design is faster, smoother, and harder to notice than ever. By the end of this video, you'll see why overspending feels normal, why it keeps repeating even when you try to stop, and what actually keeps people financially stuck longer than they expect. So ask yourself honestly, if nothing about how you spend changes from here, how long before you're right back where you started? The invisible bleed. It's never some big dramatic thing. Nobody wakes up and decides to wreck their finances in an afternoon. It starts way smaller, so small you barely notice. The coffee on the way to work, because making it at home sounds impossible when you can barely open your eyes. $12. The lunch you order because you're exhausted. $15. The late night food run because your day sucked. $20. None of it registers. You tap your card. Money goes somewhere. Your brain doesn't notice. No alarm, no warning, nothing. Then half a year goes by and someone shows you the numbers. 237 fast food orders, $4,000 on coffee. Numbers so big they don't feel real. You're genuinely shocked. How the hell did that happen? But every single one of those purchases felt completely normal in the moment. Routine, justified, easy to forget 5 minutes later. And that's what makes this so dangerous. Your brain wasn't built to catch slow damage. We evolved to react to immediate threats. A car coming at you. Your bank account hitting zero in one swipe. Those get your attention, but small amounts trickling out every day, background noise. Your brain treats it like a rounding error. Except when you zoom out over a year, those forgettable moments add up to thousands of dollars. Money that could have been building something, paying off debt, creating breathing room. And most people are already running on margins so thin that one bad month wipes them out. When you've got $200 in savings and $4,000 on your credit card, every $10 purchase isn't just $10. It's another weight on a scale that's already tipping. It's the difference between paying something off this year or pushing it to next year. But nobody questions these habits because they don't feel like habits. They feel like survival. They feel earned. The only tiny bit of happiness in a day that's otherwise grinding you down. When spending becomes how you deal with stress, it stops being a money decision. It just becomes how you make it through the day. And there's a timing problem. The consequences show up way later, totally disconnected from what caused them. Your credit card doesn't max out after one coffee. The financial pain arrives weeks or months down the line, long after you've forgotten what you spent money on. So when the stress finally hits, it feels mysterious. Where did all my money go? It went exactly where you sent it, in tiny, invisible pieces, every single day, while you weren't paying attention. When spending became content, 20 years ago, money problems were embarrassing, private. People hid their debt like a shameful secret. Overspending happened behind closed doors, in quiet panic. Then social media showed up, and everything flipped. Spending isn't private anymore. It's content. Your credit card summary is entertainment. Your yearly total gets packaged like Spotify Wrapped and posted for thousands to see. And here's the brutal part. The bigger the number, the better it performs. Post about saving $500, 17 likes. Silence. Post about accidentally spending $97,000 while laughing, goes viral. Hundreds of thousands of views. comments exploding with "same" and "me too." Platforms don't reward being careful. They reward extremes. Chaos. Watching someone's life fall apart while they treat it like it's funny. After a while, seeing this constantly starts messing with your head. When you watch outrageous spending over and over, it stops feeling outrageous. It starts feeling normal. Maybe even like something you're supposed to be doing. Maybe this is just what being an adult is now. Maybe everyone's money situation is a mess, and we're all pretending it's fine. Then comparison creeps in. Quiet, but constant. If other people are spending that much and seem okay, maybe you're the one who's behind. If their life looks fun while yours feels empty, maybe you need to spend more to keep up. Overspending becomes social currency, a way to fit in, a way to prove you're actually living. And here's what makes this really destructive. Social media strips out all the context, all the consequences. You see vacation photos, not the credit card bill after. You see the shopping haul, not the panic attack 2 weeks later. You see perfect highlight reels, never what happens when the camera's off. This creates a totally warped reality where crazy spending looks sustainable, even desirable, when in reality it's held together by debt and denial. People aren't just spending money anymore. They're performing, building a narrative, creating a character. And every comment tells them, yeah, this is who you are. Keep going. Once spending becomes entertainment, nobody analyzes it logically. It gets judged by engagement, by relatability, by how many strangers validate it, and relatability is a trap. When thousands comment, "same, me too," I literally do this constantly. Overspending stops feeling like a problem. It feels like community, like some inside joke you're all in on. If everyone's drowning in the same boat, it must be fine, right? But normalization doesn't make something harmless. It just means you can't see the damage until it's too late. When spending becomes content, reality, and performance blur, your money choices stop being based on what makes sense. They're based on how they'll look when shared, what story they tell. And once an invisible audience controls your spending, logic walks out the door. The subscription that never ends. The way we think about debt has completely changed, and it happened so gradually that almost nobody noticed. Debt used to feel heavy, scary, something you feared because the consequences were obvious and hit fast. That weight kept you careful, that feeling, gone. Now debt gets served in the softest form possible, not as a total amount, just as a monthly payment. $450 a month sounds doable. $200 a month. Barely notice it. Framed this way, debt stops feeling like debt. It feels like a subscription, like Netflix. Just one more line on your monthly bill. This shift didn't happen by accident. When the focus moves from total cost to monthly payment, the real price vanishes. Interest rates become background noise. Long-term consequences get shoved into some vague future that doesn't feel real. The only question that matters is, does this month's payment fit this month's budget? And that's how people end up financing stuff they'd never buy if they saw the full number. A $25,000 car doesn't feel like a $45,000 obligation when you break it into pieces over 6 years. The pain gets pushed off, watered down, easy to ignore until suddenly it isn't. This is especially tempting when you're younger. Your income feels like it'll grow. Future money feels certain. There's this assumption everything will work out later, even if right now things feel tight. Debt becomes a bridge to a lifestyle your current paycheck hasn't caught up to yet. What people miss is how brutal interest actually is, how high rates turn regular purchases into anchors that drag you down for years. The longer that balance sits there, the more expensive everything gets. And because the damage happens so slowly, it almost never triggers you to change anything. You stay locked in this illusion that everything's affordable. As long as the payment clears each month, it all seems fine. The warning signs only pop up when something breaks, you lose your job, medical emergency, car repair. Suddenly, those manageable payments become suffocating. At that point, your options narrow to basically nothing. Selling what you bought doesn't clear the debt. You're underwater. Refinancing isn't available. The hole is way deeper than you thought because you never actually saw how deep it was. Debt that doesn't hurt right away is dangerous because it removes urgency. It lets you commit to future obligations without understanding what you're trading away. By the time the pain shows up, the decision is ancient history, contracts signed, balance is real, and undoing it is way harder than saying yes ever was. Smart spending that isn't here's where things get twisted. Overspending doesn't always feel stupid. A lot of times it feels smart, strategic, like you're coming out ahead, discounts, employee perks, buy now, pay later, all marketed as ways to save money. 50% off, exclusive access, 0 interest for 6 months. These offers create this powerful feeling that spending less is the same as being smart with money. But here's the truth. Saving money on something you didn't need doesn't improve your finances. It's just clever marketing dressed as a good deal. Discounts don't just make things cheaper, they change how you act. They make you buy sooner, buy more, buy things you would have skipped. The pressure of a limited time deal overrides the basic question: do I even need this? Employee discounts work the same way. What feels like a benefit quietly becomes an excuse. When stuff costs less than usual, spending feels earned, responsible, smart. Over time, that discount becomes permission to spend way more than someone without it ever would. You're not saving money. You're just spending it faster while feeling good about it. Buy now, pay later takes this to another level. It completely separates buying from paying. And when there's no immediate financial consequence, that emotional friction that used to protect you disappears. The purchase feels hypothetical, almost fake, even though the bill coming later is absolutely real. Breaking a cost into 4 payments makes it feel smaller. No big deal. But those payments stack on top of each other. They eat your future paychecks before you've earned them. What starts convenient becomes suffocating. These tools also remove something critical, that natural pause that used to happen before you spent money. When you had to hand over cash or put a big charge on a card, you hesitated. That friction protected you. Now, the path from wanting to owning is instant. No friction, no pause, no moment where your brain can ask, wait, does this make sense? This changes the questions you ask. Instead of, can I afford this? It becomes, can I handle the payment? That difference is huge. One looks at your whole financial picture. The other only looks at the next 30 days. Smart overspending is the most convincing kind because it feels logical, like you're beating the system. In reality, the system is just removing every barrier that used to slow you down, making it easier to say yes over and over. The more you use these tools, the harder it gets to remember what spending actually costs. Money stops feeling limited. Your future income feels pre-spent, and when your future is already sold off, even small surprises can make everything collapse. One unexpected bill, one thing breaks, and suddenly it all falls apart. When spending becomes medicine. At some point, spending stopped being about wanting stuff. It became about trying to feel better. The phrase treat yourself used to mean something occasional. A reward after hitting a goal, a deliberate choice. Now, it's a reflex, a response to stress, to exhaustion, to boredom, to that dissatisfaction that comes with just getting through modern life. After a rough day, buying something feels easier than sitting with how that day made you feel. A coffee becomes survival. An online order becomes distraction from anxiety. Spending fills emotional holes that never stay filled. This is where overspending becomes a coping mechanism. Your brain picks up the pattern fast. Stress appears, you spend, dopamine hits, relief washes over you. For this brief, perfect moment, everything feels lighter. Then the relief fades, and the cycle resets quietly, automatically, without you noticing. What makes this hard to break is that the behavior feels justified. People are exhausted. Work is demanding and rarely rewarding. Life feels expensive, overwhelming, out of control. Spending feels like one of the few things you still decide. Saying no starts feeling like deprivation, like punishment. Over time, your brain's reward system shifts. Small purchases stop feeling special. They feel necessary. Skipping them creates discomfort, anxiety. Saying no feels like loss, even when nothing important is being taken. This is why guilt shows up so often after overspending. Not because you needed what you bought, but because that relief was so temporary. The feeling you chased disappeared almost instantly. And when guilt pops up, spending more feels like the quickest way to make it go away. One purchase becomes two. A bad feeling becomes a reason to buy something else. The original problem sits there, untouched, getting bigger. This pattern has nothing to do with how smart you are. It's about how you deal with emotions. What tools you've learned to use when life gets hard. And when spending becomes your main tool for feeling better, it gets used automatically. No thinking, no looking at what you're doing, no choice. The cost isn't just financial. It reinforces this idea that discomfort is unacceptable, that every bad feeling needs immediate relief. Over time, this makes everyday life harder to deal with unless you're constantly stimulated, constantly getting something new, constantly consuming. Spending stops being a choice. It becomes something you rely on just to function, just to make it through another day. And when money gets used to handle emotions instead of building stability, your financial habits drift further from anything resembling intention. This is how overspending becomes invisible, not a decision, a response, a reflex happening in the background while you're just trying to survive. When it becomes who you are now, we need to talk about the deepest level, the level that makes everything else way harder to fix. Because overspending becomes basically impossible to stop when it's not just a habit, when it becomes your identity. At this point, spending isn't something people do sometimes. It becomes part of how they see themselves, how they understand who they are. Shopping stops being an activity. It becomes a personality trait, a defining thing, a way to feel grounded when everything else feels uncertain. People build meaning around what they buy. The concert person who never misses a show. The Disney adult with annual passes. The fashion person with weekly hauls. The foodie who knows every new restaurant. These labels feel harmless at first, even fun. A way to belong. But over time they create expectations, obligations. To keep the identity going, the spending has to continue, has to increase, has to stay consistent. Social media makes this 10 times worse. Platforms reward consistency. Communities form around buying the same stuff. Algorithms push you to repeat what worked, to double down on whatever got attention. If buying things gets you likes, comments, validation, then stopping feels risky. Like stepping off stage mid-performance. Cutting back stops feeling like a money decision. It feels like abandoning your people. Like becoming less interesting, less relatable, less yourself. This is why people keep overspending even when they see the damage clearly. Because stopping means asking who you are without it. And that question feels terrifying, especially when other parts of life feel shaky. Spending also becomes a way to show progress. New purchases look like growth. New experiences feel like development. New stuff feels like proof your life is working, even when your financial reality tells a completely different story. When your income feels uncertain, when your career feels stuck, when you can't find fulfillment elsewhere, buying stuff offers something concrete, immediate, measurable, something you can photograph and show as evidence. That visibility makes it powerful, almost addictive. Over time, the identity reinforces itself. It's a closed loop. Spending gets validation. Validation strengthens the identity. The identity needs more spending to stay alive. Round and round. Breaking that loop feels like losing momentum, losing progress, losing yourself, not gaining control. This is where traditional financial advice falls apart, where budgets become useless, because budgets deal with behavior. They don't deal with meaning. They don't deal with the deep question of who you think you are and what that requires. Telling someone to stop spending without giving them another way to build identity just leaves a vacuum, an emptiness. And people can't leave those holes empty. So instead of stopping, they justify it. They normalize the financial stress. They absorb it like it's just part of what it costs to be themselves. The spending continues. The debt grows. And life gets quietly harder while everyone pretends everything's fine. At this stage, overspending isn't coming from impulse, not even just emotion. It's coming from fear. Fear of disconnection from the only community that feels like home. Fear of losing status, losing relevance, losing the version of yourself you've built and shown to everyone. Fear of facing what actually brings satisfaction when you strip away the constant buying. Getting free from identity-based spending takes something most people aren't ready for, completely redefining what matters, rebuilding your sense of self from scratch. It means finding fulfillment that doesn't need to be bought, that doesn't need to be shown off, that doesn't need monthly refreshing to still count. It means building an identity not tied to what you can afford, not tied to what you display, not tied to what strangers validate. That's brutal work. It takes time. It's uncomfortable, vulnerable, kind of scary. But without that fundamental shift, no amount of budgeting or discipline will ever be enough, because it's way easier to change a habit than who you think you are. And until you're willing to look at who you are without the spending, the cycle never stops. The system that built this. Let me pull this together. Here's what makes 2025 different from any other time people have struggled with money. People aren't broke because they don't know better. Everyone knows credit cards charge interest. Everyone gets how things add up. Everyone's heard the advice. Information is everywhere. That's not what's broken. What's broken is that we've built an entire environment where overspending feels logical, where debt feels smart, where constant consumption isn't just accepted, it's celebrated as part of who you are. Spending gets repackaged as self-care, as investing in yourself. Debt gets turned into manageable monthly payments that barely register. Endless buying gets framed as building your aesthetic, curating your life, refusing to settle. And all of this is happening while people's savings stay empty, while interest rates climb, while the gap between earnings and costs keeps widening. People aren't overspending because they're dumb or reckless. They're overspending because every system around them is built to make it feel normal, natural. And once something feels normal, once it becomes automatic, it becomes nearly impossible to see clearly. When overspending becomes your identity, everything changes. It stops being about money draining from your account. It becomes about the story you tell yourself, about who you are, about what your life is supposed to look like. That's why this culture is so hard to escape. You're not fighting logic. You're fighting the need to belong, to feel comfortable, to maintain your sense of who you are. In 2026, that tension is getting tighter. Interest rates are still high. Savings are still basically nothing. Small mistakes carry real weight now, real consequences. This doesn't mean stripping all joy from your life. It doesn't mean never spending on experiences or things you love. It means learning to tell the difference between real fulfillment and constant consumption. Recognizing when you're buying something because you want it versus filling some hole it can never actually fill. Because when spending becomes the foundation of your identity, financial stress becomes permanent, a constant background hum you can never escape. And the longer you go without examining that connection, the more expensive it gets to undo. The choice you have. So where does that leave you? With a choice. The same choice everyone else faces. You can keep running on autopilot. Let algorithms decide what you see. Let social pressure decide what you buy. Let emotional reflexes decide where your money goes. Watch the cycle spin until something forces it to stop, or you can step back. Create space. Start building awareness around what's actually happening under the surface. That space is where change becomes possible. Not easy, not comfortable, but possible. It means sitting with uncomfortable feelings instead of immediately buying your way out. It means asking whether the lifestyle you're performing online is actually the life you want to live. It means being okay with looking boring, basic, behind. If that's what financial stability takes, it means recognizing that the version of adulthood you see on social media isn't sustainable for most people, that spending is often fueled by debt you can't see, by content creation money, by financial situations nothing like yours. It means building a life where how you feel about yourself isn't tied to what you can afford, where your identity doesn't need constant consumption, where relief comes from things that don't cost money and don't disappear when the dopamine wears off. This isn't a call to live like a minimalist with 3 possessions. This is just a call to be honest, to stop pretending, to stop acting like the spending is fine just because everyone else is doing it, to stop waiting for some future version of yourself who makes more money to fix problems that aren't about money. Because here's what people don't want to hear. If you can't manage money now, making more won't fix anything. The habits will scale up. The identity will demand more. The emotional patterns will find new outlets. The time to change isn't when you hit 6 figures. It's right now, with whatever you've got, however messy things are. And yeah, that's hard. It's hard to say no when everyone around you says yes. It's hard to step back when algorithms are designed to pull you forward. It's hard to sit with difficult feelings instead of buying them away. But you know what's harder? Years of financial stress, living paycheck to paycheck no matter how much you make. Watching debt grow while savings stay flat, feeling trapped by decisions you don't even remember making. Here's the truth. Most people are one unexpected expense away from serious trouble, not because they're careless, but because the margins really are that thin, because the spending really has been that consistent, because the relief really has been that temporary. Breaking out of this cycle isn't about perfection. It's not about never spending on anything fun. It's about removing the autopilot, bringing intention back, asking yourself the question before you buy instead of after. It's about recognizing when spending is trying to fill a gap it can never actually fill, when it's covering something deeper, when it's being used as a substitute for rest, for real connection, for purpose, for actual peace. The financial advice industry loves tactics. Cut subscriptions. Make coffee at home. Skip avocado toast. But tactics don't work when the real drivers stay in place. You can cancel every subscription and still be trapped in the same pattern if the emotional stuff doesn't change. Real change means looking at why you spend, not just what you spend on. It means examining what you're really trying to buy when you add something to your cart. Because most of the time it's not the thing itself. It's the feeling you hope it'll create, the identity you hope it'll reinforce, the validation you hope it'll bring. And here's the uncomfortable truth. That feeling is almost always temporary. The relief fades, the excitement dulls. The identity needs another purchase to stay propped up. The cycle continues unless you choose to break it. What happens next? The culture isn't changing on its own. Algorithms aren't stopping. Systems built to make spending frictionless aren't going anywhere. If anything, they're getting more sophisticated. If something changes, it has to start with people becoming aware, with recognizing the patterns in their own lives, with questioning what feels normal just because it's everywhere. The culture isn't going to save you. The next viral spending recap is already being filmed. The next buy now, pay later scheme is already being designed. The next psychological trick is already being tested. If something changes, it starts with you, with awareness, with intention, with being willing to question everything you've been told is normal. Overspending culture in 2026 isn't going anywhere. The trap is real. The system is built. The damage keeps spreading. But whether you participate, that's optional. Hard to opt out of. Uncomfortable to walk away from. But optional all the same. The question isn't whether the trap exists. The question is whether you're ready to actually see it clearly, and whether you're ready to choose something different.